Okay. Let me share that. Okay. Let's start this from scratch. I'm going to play this. I guess, did you guys hear the audio? If I got Mary.
Yeah, I did hear it, although it has stopped now.
Yeah, okay. I just wanted to be sure. Yes, so going to play this again and hit play.
Look around yourself and there is a project underway. Whether you are manufacturing a new car model, or constructing the world's tallest building, or even organizing a grand wedding, we all manage products every day, big and small. Not everything needs an extensive oversight. For instance, cooking a meal for yourself does not require that much planning. However, cooking meals for the entire neighborhood or for the entire town is a serious affair. You need to plan, gather resources, and have a timeline in place. This needs a proper management. However, about 50% of companies don't understand the importance of project management. So what is project management? Simply put, project management is about knowing what you want to achieve, how you are going to achieve it, how much time it will take to achieve. It's a set of practices that strategically lead you to your goal in an efficient way. This is because project management ensures you go through the 5 stages of a project: initiation, planning, execution, monitoring and controlling, and closing. Initiation is when you find out what you're doing, why you're doing it, and who is involved in the project. Planning lets you outline the details of your project, such as a timeline, cost, resources needed, risks, and quality. Execution is where you start working on your project and ensure everything stays on track. With monitoring and controlling, you compare your real-time progress to the original plan and take measures when errors occur. And closing is wrapping up your project, analyzing what's been done, and noting what could be done better the next time. Project management doesn't just improve your productivity, it also provides a foundation for better collaboration between team members. It helps you get the right people to work on the right jobs, makes you ready to manage any risks that may arise, and allows you to get your work done on time, all the time.
Great. Did we all pick that, guys? Any question on the...
No, it was explanatory, no?
Great. Thanks, guys. All right. So in a nutshell, right, that's basically what project management is. And then as we start to dive in to check, to look at the other aspects of project management, agile, we'll do that in the space of the course as well. So in a nutshell, it's just being able to take something from point A to point B, and then being able to do all of those things as you go along, right? That's project management in its entirety. Any questions, Busola, Chris? Are we good? We can kick on, right?
Yep.
Great, awesome. Okay. Yes, thanks, Busola. All right. So what is project what are projects, right? So a project is a temporary endeavor with a beginning and an end. So it's not your typical office as usual, right? What does that mean? It's not your, I'm trying to, get data from point A, I'm trying to post it into point B, I'm trying to collect money from point A from so customer and then post it into my account, right? So they're two different things. It's not business as usual. Business as usual, that's what business as usual means, right? But a project means that I want to achieve something, right? So a typical example would be, say I want to. Okay, so so a typical one that easily comes to mind is the Naira redesign, right? There was that happened in Nigeria, so that's a project. It's going to have a start date. They're going to start designing it, and then they are going to end it when they stop designing and then present it to the public. That's an example of a project. Another project is I want to sit for an exam, right? I want to write my project PMP exam. So I'm going to start reading from a particular date. And then when you finish and then pass that exam, that project closes, right? So I want to build a road for my constituency. I want to buy a car. I want to travel. You can treat those things as projects, right? So that's typically what a project is. Guys, please, if I'm going too fast, please feel free to always pull me back. I'm more than happy to always come back.
Dad, look, this is PG.
All right, so it's a temporary endeavor with a beginning and an end. So it would have a start date. It would also have an end date as well, right? So it creates a unique product, a service, or a result, right? So a result would be I passed my PMP exam, or a result would be people can now travel from point A to point B because you fixed that particular road, which we called a project, or we create a unique product. Say you have an idea for a product, and then you use project management to handle it. Say maybe a CUDA bank or a learning app or an LMS, right? Is progressively elaborated and distinguishing characteristics of each unique project. So not all projects are not the same, right? What that means is project A will be different from project B, right? Project A can be, me passing my exam, or project B can be me trying to build an app for people to learn, or project C might be me trying to copy Udemy or Coursera, right? Those two projects are not the same, right? Not one project is the same. You might learn from that project, right, from a previous project to guide you in how you want to deploy or deliver that project, right? But not all projects are the same. To be successful as a project, you need planning, you need organization, and then you need execution. Those you need to be able to plan and say, okay, this is how we are going to do this particular road. This is how I'm going to start reading for my exams. 1 hour per day, I'm going to start reading for that exam, or 2 hours per day. Once it hits 6:30 in the evening, I'm back from work, or I'm a 9 to 5, I'm back. London traffic or Lagos traffic, as the case may be. I'm back home by 5, or I work from home. I'm off my desk at 5, and then I switch to study mode from 6 to 7 or 6 to 7:30. It creates that plan for you to be able to pass that exam, right? And then you start to organize, what do I need to make this a possibility? Do I need to always go to the library, or I can work from home, or I can read from home? Do I need to shut myself out from people, or do they have or I'm good, right? And then execution just means putting that plan into fruition. Yeah, so that's simply what execution means. Just put that plan into fruition. Once it's 6 o'clock, your alarm goes off, and then you go to start reading, right? That's basically what execution is. A project has to fulfill its set aims and objectives within a limited period of time. with limited fund and personnel and other resources. Basically, what this means is you won't have everlasting resources, right? You won't have everlasting resources. You would have um, limited resources, right? And then you'll be constrained. You'll be constrained between resources. You'll be constrained between people. You'll be constrained within time as well. What that means is you have to find a balance between time and your resources, right? You want to find out. So if your project is suffering, just a second, guys. So you have to be able to find that balance. But as we go, into the project, you see that project management basically is about being able to balance cost, resources, or people, and then time. Right. So that's the bulk of what you do as a project manager, right? And you need to be able to pay attention to those things. Sometimes you're going to ask yourself, should you increase cost or should you reduce cost? You also don't want to play with quality. So take example of where you're trying to build a road, right? You don't want to reduce the quality. You finish the road in January, and by March that road is bad again, right? Or you finish a product, and then by March people are already complaining that your product isn't solving the need of them as customers, right? So you want to be able to balance those things as you go along as a project manager. And what are the characteristics, right? Of a project, right? It means to bring out change, right? Like I said, it has a definite beginning and an end. Once the project objectives or deliverables are achieved, the project ends. And case in point, like I said, once you pass your exam, right? For, let's say you're studying for a PMP exam or a nursing exam, whatever exam you're studying for. Once you've gotten your results, that exam is done. There's nothing for you to go back to as far as that exam is, right? Once you've flagged off a road, or once you've delivered that project or delivered that app and people are already using it, that product or that project rather, or that service or that project has ended. That's as it is. Right. Project objectives or deliverables should be SMART, right? Should be SMART. SMART basically is an acronym for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bound. And we are going to go in, take one of them one at a time. Um, just before we go on, I know a handful of us have items and shifts that they need to do today. So I did tell the anchor that I would advise we do 12 to 2 today, and then we pick up again next week, so that I give you guys time to take on stuff that you want to do. Let me know if that works, and then we can. Solar, Mary, AY, Chris.
Yeah, that's fine. That's okay.
Great. Chris, Busola, does that work for you as well?
Yeah, that's fine. If you want to still do 12 to 3, that's still also okay too, depending on
Yeah,
you.
I know people tend to, because of shifts, and I usually don't want to buy into that time, and also you want to rest as well.
Yeah, that's fine.
Great, awesome. Okay, back to class. All right, so what SMART basically means specific, and what does specific mean? Specific means I want to build road A to B, right? I want to build it from, if you're familiar with Lagos, I want to build it from Lagos. I want to build the Lagos Ibadan Expressway, and Lagos Ibadan Expressway starts from Berger to we get to Iwo Road, or till we get to Challenge, or till we get to the Guru Maharaji station on that road. I want to pass my PMP exam. I want to pass my nursing exam. I want to deliver a project. I want to deliver a product that allows me to collect data from students and then help to grade accordingly, right? So it has to be specific. You have to put it down. I want to build an application that allows me to help loan companies collect their loans back from defaulters. I want to build an app that allows people to study project management within 12 weeks or and prepare them for the exam. So it has to be specific. People need to know what it is that project is about. It needs to be documented, right? Then it needs to be measurable, right? So measurable in this term means I want to do 100 kilometers of road. I want to do 50 kilometers of road. I want to, you want to be able to put those things into specific so that when you hit 100 kilometers of road, you know that, and then you measure it and you know that that's done. If you do that exam and you don't pass, that means you put a measure to it because the overall, the overall goal is for you to pass that exam, right? It needs to be achievable, right? Achievable means, is this doable? Am I trying to do a tall order? Do I have the resources to be able to do it, right? I want to write my PMP exam or my Scrum Master exam. Do I have the knowledge or the technical know-how, the materials for me to be able to do it? Or am I just, building castles in here and I can't do that, right? It needs to be realistic as well. It needs to be realistic in the sense that, am I just, fooling myself, or this project just doesn't make sense, right? So you put all of that on the table. And by the time you start to be, make it specific, make it measurable, make it achievable, then you start asking yourself, is this going to be achievable? If you watch football, it's like Enyimba saying that, FC saying that they want to be champions of Europe. It's not achievable. It's not possible, right? So those are that's a typical objective. And then time bound. You want to give yourself a time frame. So say January to March or Q1 2022, Q1 2024, Q2 2024 is the time that you've given yourself to do this, right? That's what you want to do. You want to be able to, put time constraints to it. Putting time constraints to things will give you the ability to, be on your toes so that you're not just faffing around and not you put the work or the effort into place, right? So that's what it means for a project to be smart. So it needs to be specific, it needs to be measurable, it needs to be achievable, it needs to be realistic, and then it needs to be time bound as well. Any questions so far before we kick on?
Got the comments. I know.
Yes, please go ahead.
I've gone through this previously, but the achievable parts and the realistic parts, both sounding so synonymous, as if they have the same meanings.
Yeah, I get what you mean. So achievable in context would mean, okay. So let's take this, right. So achievable. So let's take that you're doing your master's program, right? And first part of action is saying, I want to get a distinction out of school, right? Out of my master's program. Is that achievable? Yes. Realistic now comes into play when you've gotten your first semester results and they are 40s and 50s and distinction starts from 70. Then you now want to start asking yourself, is this goal still realistic, right? Can I still do it with? I mean, because the minute you start getting 50s and 40s in your grades, obviously that means that you cannot hit that distinction mark. Does that make sense?
Yeah, perfect analogy. Thanks.
AY, please go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to know if I'm the only one having problem with the audio, or maybe it's general. It's quite low here. I had to use a wired headset now, and it's still kind of low. So I want to know if it's general. I'm the only one. And if it's general, I don't know if there's anything you could do to amplify the volume.
I mean, just to be sure, so that Chris, Mary, Busola, can you guys hear me clearly?
I can hear you perfectly well.
Yeah, thanks, man. Busola, Chris.
Very, very clear.
I can hear you clearly. I can hear you clearly.
Yeah, so it was probably maybe from your end.
Oh, okay, okay. I'll try and see what I can do. Thank you for that, please.
All right, thanks, bro. Yeah, so having touched on the objectives, so we're not doing project management defined. Or what exactly is project management, right? So project management is the art of managing projects with the specific objective of one, ensuring that the project objectives are realized, ensuring that the projects are delivered on schedule, and then ensuring that the projects are delivered within budget, right? So what does this mean in context and its entirety? What this means is ensuring that the project objectives are met. Like I was saying to Chris, right? Making sure that I want to get a distinction. That's a project objective, right? So the art of you being able to get that distinction from the first minute you get into class is, and putting a plan into play, right? By doing your assignment, making sure you do your Harvard referencing properly, making sure you submit your assignment on time, making sure you go the extra mile if there's an exam, doing your group project. That all of that you do, right? All of that you are doing at that point in time is called project management, right? And then making sure that the projects are delivered on schedule. You want to get a distinction, but you eventually had to go to defer, right? So what I mean is I know programs are like 9 to 10 months plus thesis and dissertation, 9 to 10 months. And yes, you did get a distinction, but you didn't get it within the 9 month frame which you've set to yourself. You're not getting it 12 months later. Why? Because you deferred your thesis to the end of maybe something came up, family emergency, or you were short of resources and all of that stuff, and you eventually got it later, right? So that was not done according to schedule, because the schedule you set for yourself was when 9 months time, but you've now gone to do 12 months or 13 months because something happened along the line, right? And then ensuring that projects are delivered within projects. The cost of your program was £12,000 or £13,000. You don't want to have to spend another. I know when you're writing your thesis and you go overboard, you get to pay some sort of administration charge or facility charge or faculty charge or extra charge for that. You don't want to have to pay that because why? You didn't finish your program by submitting your project in time. So all of those put together, right, is called project management. Being able to make sure that the objectives are met, the projects are delivered on schedule. Your 9 months or your 10 months is your 10 months, and then you do not extend it, beyond, and then everything is done according to budgets, right? So your £12,000 is not going to turn to £13,000 because of the extra that you have to pay at the end of the day, because you couldn't, because the schedule cascaded down, and which would eventually, affect the cost, right? The application of knowledge, skills, tools, and techniques to project objectives, activities to meet stakeholder needs and expectations. Where projects are concerned, they're always, how can I put it? There are always stakeholders involved, right? For example, maybe Chris's parents decided to sponsor him to do his master's. I'm sure you don't want to tell them at the end of 9 months that daddy or mommy, it's like I'll not be graduating in September. I'm going to graduate in June, right? Chris, case in point, right? So they are stakeholders, right? They are stakeholders because you got funded by them. And it's the same way project management works in the corporate place. People get to fund those projects, and you as a project manager, it is your duty to make sure that the funds that have been placed into your care, and then the resources and the schedule that you've handed over to stakeholders are properly managed to deliver the projects that they've asked you to deliver. They don't want to hear story at the end of at the end of 9 months that I did not graduate, or I had an extra year, or I didn't finish my thesis on time because one faculty was harassing me, or one lecturer said that I wasn't good enough. All those kind of conversations. The most important thing for them is that, we've given you something and then you should deliver it at the end of the day. Right. Any questions here so far, people? Great. I'm going to assume no questions and we can go on. All right. So why project management, right? What exactly is the big deal, about project management? And the big deal about PM is it helps to get a lot of stuff done, right? And even not just in the corporate place, in your day-to-day life as well. The execution part of project management helps you to deliver things on a personal scale. So trying to lose weight is project management, right? And I say it's project management because that, you can say that, look, I'm going to go to the gym every day over a 3 months period. I'm going to watch my diet. I'm going to count my calories, and I want to go down from, say, 112 kg to 100 kg or to 90 kg over a 3 month period or over a 6 month period, right? Those things matter, right? You can use project management to do that, and that is how it affects your life as a human being or as a person, right? So why project management? Because project delivery is influenced by many factors, and it is crucial to manage it. You just don't want to leave things to chance, right? You don't want to leave your masters to chance. You don't want to leave your deploying of an app or something to production to chance, right? You don't want to do that. Why? Because things would always happen, right? Case in point is I work for a fintech, and and especially when it comes to technology and engineering, software engineering, things would always happen, and you don't want to put those things into chance. You want to be able to say you might not be able to get it 100%, right? But you want to be able to say, okay, if this happens, this is what we are going to do. If this happens, this is what we are going to do. Being able to manage the necessary risks involved in, so that you don't leave things to chance, right? So such management requires technical and managerial skills. A lot of things will come into play. People skills, being able to deal with people, being able to interact with people. Um, Tools. Some people use, in my organization, we use a tool called Jira. We'll take a look at that in this class as well. So a tool called Jira and Slack for communication. Some people use Microsoft Teams. I'm not sure if anyone. I want to believe, we all know what Microsoft Team is.
Yeah.
Great. So some people
Yes.
use Great. Some people use Microsoft Teams. We use Slack. Some people use there's another one, Google Meet for their meetings and communications. Yes, sorry. So I had a little distraction from a little terrorist here. Right. So different tools for you to use in the workplace, depending on the organization that you work for, right? Clarity of concept, resource management. You need to be careful with money that has been placed in your care for when you're trying to allocate resources, allocate people. You need to your people skills needs to be in place for you to be able to handle project management accordingly. Man, machine, materials. That's in terms of resources, funds, people. The human part of human resources needs to come into play when you're doing project management. A project that lacks proper management comes out often with technical faults too major to be ignored. In engineering, there's something we call technical debt, and technical debt means that you've pushed something to production or it has gone live, and you find out that there's a lot of bugs, associated with that stuff, right? So once that happens, it means the time that you need to be able to do more stuff, you can't do that. You have to go back and fix the bugs that you've deployed to production to make sure that all of that stuff doesn't, it doesn't affect the revenue generating for the company or doesn't affect the users, the customers' experience, right? So you want to make sure that your project management skill, the project management map or roadmap, the planning, the execution, the organizing, the administration that you've designed or that you're going to go throughout the life cycle of that particular project is top notch. I mean, there will be mistakes here and then. Obviously, no project gets done 100%, but the plan is to make sure that it's reduced to the barest minimum, so that when stakeholders are asking for feedback or for questions or for whatever for whatever it is that they are going to ask for, you have answers to those questions, and they are not just saying what happened is this is what happened. Also need to be able to escalate when you need to escalate. Keep the right people in touch, in terms of, we'll take a look at how to communicate as well during the course of the class. We'll also take a look at a racing matrix, people who should be responsible, who should be accountable, and all of that stuff as we go on in the course. Right. So that is why project management is necessary, not just in your individual lives, but so that you can manage the things that you've done, or that the projects have been assigned to you from start to finish, and then there are no if, buts, and maybes, along the line. Right. So I said earlier that being project management basically is about managing the triple constraints, right? And what's that? Triple constraint. The scope is time, and then it's cost, right? Those three usually go hand in hand, right? And they go hand in hand because you want to be able to manage and balance these three accordingly, right? If you don't do that, then it becomes an issue. It becomes an issue because if you get a scope creep, right? Let me backtrack a little. So what is scope, right? So we'll take a look at that in a few bits. So basically, you want to be able to find a balance between these three. You don't want to, so for time means that you don't want to go above and beyond the time that you've been asked to deliver a project. So let's say I've said that I'm going to, deliver an application to production in 6 weeks, right? I'm going to deliver an application in 6 weeks, right? I don't want to go beyond that time. Obviously, there will be factors that would want me to go beyond that time. I don't want to go beyond that time. The cost element means that there's a possibility that I spend more. Sometimes we do what we call trade-offs. Trade-offs mean that if I see that I'm going beyond a particular time for my project, I can, go back to my project sponsor and say, let's assume that Mary is my project sponsor, and I say, go back to Mary and say, hi, Mary, how's it going today? Looks like we might have an issue with this particular project. Looks like we might go beyond our 6 weeks timeline. What's the issue? The issue is that we need more developers to be able to, deploy this particular feature on this application. More developers means we have to get, either do overtime or get more developers to do it. Okay, if we are going to do overtime, how much is it going to cost us? We are going to hire more developers to do it. How much is it going to cost us? And what are the pros and cons? More developers means that they will need to first of all understand the code to be able to deliver the project, right? Extra time means that the engineers already know what to do. We are just paying them extra for them to be able to deliver that project. Let's say their time ends at 5, so we want them to extend, their working times to 8 o'clock or to 9 o'clock, right? So that's the cost element. Sometimes you do trade-offs. Scope is when, so I'm saying that I want to deploy, typical example was, so there was a project that I was working on for a microfinance bank. Was a core banking application. It was very heavy project. Cost was around 200,000 euros USD. I wanted to deploy it over a 6 month period, right? So we had started that work, and we had gotten the scope document. Everything had been signed off, but in the middle of that implementation, in the middle of all of that, we had a CFO change, right? And what that means is, and it was a company-wide project. The CEO was involved, the GMD was involved, the CFO was involved, the CRO was involved. But in the middle of that, we had a CFO change. And what that means is the new CFO would come with his own set of demands, right? Which obviously we had no idea that that was going to happen. Like I said earlier, things would always happen. So what happened was he came in, the young man came in and said, if I are here, we are doing this. And I said, yes, sir, we are doing this. So can I have the scope document? Showed him the scope document. And I said, this, blah, 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 this is what we intend to do for this particular phase, right? And 1 week later, he called me into his office and said, if I've seen this, good work, but there's an issue. And I said, what's the issue, sir? He said, there's a new CBN directive that needs us to do this, and this, right? And that changed, that changed the whole conversation of the project that we had started, right? And I said, okay, so what do we do? He said, so we called a meeting with the vendors who were trying to implement the project, because it wasn't an application that was built in house. It was supplied by an external vendor, right? And he said, what are we going to do? And I said, okay, let me call a meeting with the vendors. So we had the meeting, took us a week, we hashed out the details. If we're going to get it done within that particular time frame, it would mean them deploying more people, would take our 200,000 to around 220,000. And that meant that we had to go back to the board as a project manager. It's not something you want to do, going back to the board for more money. And so we sat down and then we thought through it, and we said, look, what's the easy way out? And I said, what if and I asked for the CBN timeline, and they said the CBN timeline was 6 months was 6 weeks, right? And I said, why don't we speak to our contact at the CBN and say, look, we are in the middle of an implementation, right? What if we finish this and then do this IFRS? If anyone is an accountant here, they know what IFRS 9 means. IFRS 9, in the phase 2 of the project. So we went back. Luckily, the guy said, okay, look, write us a letter. We'll give you guys an extension of another 3 months. You just have to be able to commit to say that, look, part 2 or being able to implement this thing will be done in another 2 to 3 months, right? So that's a typical example of a scope change. And you would always have that, right? You would always have things like that coming into play. So your job as a project manager is to be able to balance, 3 of these constraints. And what are these constraints? Scope, time, and cost. You need to be able to balance, these 3 to be able to succeed and to be able to, successfully deliver your project. Any question, guys? Chris, Mary, Busola, Ayo.
Yes, I have a question.
Please go ahead.
You were implementing something for the customer, so to
Yes.
say. So there was now a change in statutory requirements. If that will require extra cost on your part,
Yes.
who is supposed to bear that cost? Bearing in mind that you've signed contracts with your own customer, your own client, signed an agreement with the customer. You are implementing, and there's a statutory requirement down the line, which now requires additional funding.
Yes.
Now, who pays for that?
So, great question. And one of the things that, like I mentioned earlier, is your people management key and stakeholder management. is very critical when it comes to project management, right? So if I get you correctly, Ayo, so I'm the project manager, right? And your company is the, let's say Ayo is the client, right? And the statutory requirement is coming from who? From your end, right? Or from which end?
The statutory requirement is coming from CBN.
From
In
CBN.
the example you gave, yes, statutory like government.
Yes,
So
yes,
the
yes.
government now brings in a requirement now.
Yes.
You
For
know,
us,
government requirements are not suggestions. You must do it.
they have to be done. Yes, yes. They
Yes,
have to
yes.
be done. Yes. So it depends on one relationship. It depends on the cost involved. What you usually want to do is to have a conversation with everybody, right? So project sponsor, with the most especially a project sponsor. If it has to get to the board level, it gets to the board level. In most cases, you want to be close, very, very close to your project sponsor. You guys have to be 5 and 6. I was very close to the project sponsor because he was the CEO and I worked with him, almost all the time. I was in the strategy department, so project management was part of my work. So we always had conversations and I always kept him in the loop. Interestingly, he was one that brought about the letter and said, "If what do we do?" So, and then I showed it to the CFO guy, and he had already had that conversation. And then so you want to do a roundtable, first things first. And then where costs are involved, you want to see how you can either split or come to a concession on how to implement it, right? Some people will say, look, it's a relationship issue, and I'll pay the money now if you promise me that we'll get future projects, right? Or the board will say, okay, I mean, it's a statutory requirement, we don't have a choice but to pay it, right? So it depends on how you properly manage your stakeholders at the end of the day. You don't want to shove it down their throat and say, look, you guys it's your business, you have to pay for it, right? You want to be able to let them see that you are a partner in the projects that you're implementing, not just implementing the project for implementing the project's sake, right? You want them to see you as a partner, as as a business partner for the business, so that when things like that come into play, they're able to manage it properly and they're always able to, seek your advice. I mean, after the project, that particular project, done all that project as well. And times I go above and beyond. But if it's a statutory requirement, like you said, it's not in your, as a project, if you are part of the organization, right, that's a different conversation entirely. If you are not part of the organization, that's a different conversation entirely. It will still be part of the fees that you charge, right? But you can say, look, this was not your fault, it was nobody's fault. Nobody saw this coming, right? I'll waive my fees and then let's just get the job done. But if you're an internal project manager, you don't have a choice but to get the job done. But the board will now sit down and say, okay, what do we do? Can we do this now? What's it going to cost us? Is it going to cost us extra? And then you now sit with the vendor to say, vendor, how much is it going to cost us? So it's going to cost us $10K extra, £15K extra. How do we now manage it? Can we pay this money in installment? Can you give us a timeline to pay this money? So, like I said, your stakeholder management will come into play, and your people management will come into play at the end of the day.
Thank you.
Any other questions, guys? Great. All right, so let's take a look at scope. Right, so scope refers to the defined boundaries or extent of what a project is supposed to accomplish, right? It outlines the goals, the deliverables, the tasks, the cost, and deadlines to give a clear understanding of what is included within the project and what is not, and which is a typical example of what I've just said. And then you get this a lot, especially when it comes to senior management or senior leadership, right? I'm also working on a project at the moment, and we said we are going to, be able to receive remittances from, because I work with a fintech that does remittance. We're going to be able to do remittances from a particular African country, right? And my CTO comes in and says, if I have and I said, okay, fine. We're doing that project and we are on course to deliver that when we said we're going to deliver, with 1 or 2 days to spare, hopefully, right? And then he says, we have a session with the chief product officer, and they want to be able to add another African country, because it's in the same, it's the same platform. And we had that meeting, and I said, yes, it's the same platform, but it would require extra work effort to deliver. So, and we have to make a choice, right? And that choice is, we either get one done now and then give you another timeline to do the next one, or we try to do both done now and then we go beyond the time, right? So those are decisions you want to be able to make, right, as you go along, as you're going along. So scope creep, yes, will always happen, and it's your job as a project manager to be able to handle and manage those things. If you don't, then you just find out that everyone will just start throwing things into your plan, and they will continue to affect your plan, and you continue to adjust project plans upon project plans. 1 week, you've gone 2 weeks extra. By the time you are reporting again, you find out that, I've gone like 4 weeks extra, right? And would also scope creep usually comes with extra time, extra resources, money, people. So you want to be careful, right? So this project scope acts as a foundation, helping to prevent scope creep, right? Uncontrolled changes or additions to the project goals, ensuring that the project stays on track and within its intended parameters. And that's your work. Your job is to make sure that your project is on track. Your project doesn't get derailed, right? It doesn't get tampered with. The minute it gets tampered with, then there's a problem, because, like I said, time is going to be affected. Resources, most often than not, will be affected. So you need to be able to say, and then once again, your people management skills and your stakeholder management skills comes into play, right? To say, we can't do this now. We'll do it as version 2.0. And I can give you a proper, breakdown of how to get there for that conversation later. And that you need to be able to, I mean, it might get you into trouble sometimes. It's gotten me into trouble every now and then. But at the end of the day, I think the many people start seeing that it's not that you don't want to get the job done. It's just that if you don't do this, you guys won't do it. You won't get the job done at all in the first place, right? So that's basically what scope is. Time. So time refers to the project schedule or the timeline within which the project must be completed. It includes important milestones and deadlines, right? And what does that mean? That means that, so when you're doing your plan, when you're doing your project plan, you want to be able to say, let me use a case in point. Let me use the example of the Lagos Ibadan Expressway that I mentioned. So we're going to do 10 months and we want to cover 100 kilometers or 120 kilometers of road, right? So we are saying by end of Q1, I want to be able to cover 30 kilometers of road, right? By end of Q2, I want to be able to cover 40 or 50 kilometers of road, depending on the work rate that you projected for people to do. And that's assuming that resources and money and people are constant, right? So you want to be able to put those milestones in your plan to say, look, by January end, this is what I want to do. I want to pass my PMP exam and I've set a 3-month agenda. By the end of, I want to write my exam by the end of March. By the end of January, I should have finished taking my PMP course, right? Paid for and taking the course. By the end of February, I should have revised my PMP course and then read the PM body of knowledge material, right? By 2 weeks to my exam, I should have started revising my papers and getting ready for the exam, right? So those are milestones and deadlines. So that's like what time does, right? For importance, managing time effectively ensures that project is completed on schedule and meets any time sensitive requirements, right? I mean, there are times that you have conversations around, hey, Ayo, we need to deliver this project within 3 months. Why? Because there's a business that we want to do, or there's a commercial, there's a commercial element to it. And by commercial element, it means that we're trying to partner with someone and they've given us 3 months to implement this particular side of the project so that they can use us as their partners to deliver something into their boss. So a case in point might be they're trying to get a contract, and they said, okay, Ayo, you don't have a company, you don't have directors. Why don't you do this? We're going to give you 2 months or 3 months. We want you to register your company. We want you to get directors, and then we want to start seeing some sort of documentation, across the line, right? And those are time sensitive. If you don't do that in 3 months, then you don't get that contract or you don't get that job, right? So those are time sensitive projects that you want to be able to. You don't want to go. So when you start planning out, you now start saying, okay, by week 1, I should have gotten the lawyer that would register the company. By the end of week 2, I should have, paid for it, start looking out for directors, right? And by the end of week 3 or week 4, I should have been able to send some documentation to the project or to the proposed partners for this particular contract or for this particular project. And that's what, so time basically just keeps you in check when it comes to schedules and when it comes to deadlines and milestones. Constraints. So time constraints can be influenced by external factors such as market demand or regulatory deadlines, just like we spoke about, Ayo, and must be carefully monitored and adjusted as needed, right? So, for example, CBN just said INTOs can't send dollars or foreign currency into Nigeria anymore. And it has to be strictly naira. And of course, they would have given the different companies that circular, and then they would have told them, look, between now and now, you need to have done this and get back to us, right? It's a regulatory requirement. There's nothing, little or nothing you can do about it. You might be able to extend based on, extenuating circumstances, but aside that, you can't, right? You have to do it. And these constraints and these things will come from time to time. But you being able to manage those things, that might derail your plan a little bit, but you being able to manage those risks or those, those distractions at the end of the day helps you to become a better project manager and a better stakeholder person at the end of the day. Cost. So cost refers to the, let me extend this. All right, so cost refers to the budget or financial resources allocated to the project. Right? It includes not only monetary expenses, but also the allocation of resources like labor, materials, and equipment. So cost is just not financial, right? It has things to do with people as well. So the people, the engineers that are going to do the work, the personnel that are going to do the work, from technology to IT, to HR, to the accounting person, to the security man, to everybody, right? All those costs, all those things are considered as resources or costs, right? Importance. So managing costs is critical to ensure that the project is completed within the available budget. It involves budgeting, it involves tracking expenses and controlling spending. Right? You just don't want to keep spending money. Right? You want to be able to track what it is that you're spending, right? So my project is £300,000 or £50,000, and as at month 1, you spend £200,000. Obviously, you are going to start looking for where to ask for more money, right? You don't want that to be the case, right? So you want to be able to track your expenses. Most often than not, what I usually do is I usually have, in most of the projects that I've done, there's always usually like a junior project manager that assists, or a project officer that assists, right? So that person tracks how much we've spent on this, have all the receipts, and then we do like a reconciliation / audit at the end of each week, right? Before we go into the next week. So we know that we have this amount, but this is what we spent. Have we gone over budget? Have we spent, what we have planned not to spend, or what we didn't plan to spend? So you want to be able to track it as early as as possible, so that when you are doing your weekly reporting to management or to leadership or to your project sponsor, right, those things would be in play, and then they can see it and say, I spent £250,000 in a week. So what's happening? You have a breakdown of what you've spent according to the project, and then they'll start asking you questions. Are you sure this is going to, you won't go over budget at the end of the day, right? So you want to be able to put all of those, those documentation, your receipts, your paper, together at the end of the day. Trade-offs, right? So in many cases, trade-offs between scope, time, and cost may be necessary. And like I said earlier, right? So for example, to reduce cost, you may need to reduce the scope of the project, or extend the timeline, or manage with limited resources. And what does that mean in its entirety? So what that means is there are days that there are projects that you might have to say, look, there's no way I'm going to do it. I'm going to go overboard for this particular project, right? I'm going to go above. So you now want to sit down and say, okay, I'm going to go overboard, but what can I adjust? Can I reduce the scope of the project? So if you are meant to do 10 things, you do 6 things, but you have to also document and report that, right? Or I'm meant to do 50 things, right? And then you say, look, I can't do 50 things, but I'm going to do 30 things. And that 30 things means that this and this and this is what is going to be done or delivered. Or you now said, these 50 things. So if management wants us to do these 50 things, I might need to spend more money, right? I might need to spend like if another 50K or another 20K or another 30K at the end of the day, right? And that usually, so your job is to always put all of those, the tripartite things, the triangle into conversations and say, okay, this is going to happen, but I'll have to spend more money, or I'm going to have to reduce this, or I'm going to have to elongate the time, right, to which this is done, right? The minute you start to do that, to be able to balance, these things a lot better, then it makes your life a whole lot easier at the end of the day, right? It really, really does make your life easier at the end of the day, because you don't want to be caught unawares and it's 2 weeks to the end of the project, and then you now start telling management that you're not going to complete it in 2 weeks. But you want to be able to see ahead of time to say, look, this is what's going to happen based on our trajectory so far. It's a 6 weeks project. At week 2, we've spent this. We found out that this is going to happen. So we have 1 or 2 or 3 choices. We either reduce the amount of things we promised we're going to deliver from 6 to 4, or from 6 to 3, and then do this in the next phase. Or we do it, but we'll come back to ask you for more money, right? So, or we extend the time to not just 6 weeks to 8 weeks to 10 weeks. So those are the conversations you want to have as a project manager. And like I said, you're being able to do that, balance the 3 would either decide, if you're a good project manager or not so good project manager. I'm going to pause here for questions. I think we have a 5-minute break from 2:05 to 2:10. Any questions that you guys would like me to answer? More than happy to. Ayo, Chris, maybe Busola, comment as well.
None from me.
Thank you, Mary. Miss Busola, Ayo, we good?
Yeah, we're good.
Good.
Yeah, we're super good.
Good. So looking good so far. Great. All right, so all right, Busola, thank you. So we have 5 minutes. So we're back at 2:10, and then we take it to end of class. So feel free to stretch your legs, drink water. Back at 2:10. All right, we're back. Great. Okay. Let's kick off from where we stopped. So I mean, guys, do we now understand the concept of cost, time, and scope?
Yes, I do.
So for example, if I say, okay, Mary, this is your project, and so let's take for example the project that we're trying to do, and typical project example is an attendance project, right? It's a technology project, it's an attendance where people come in and sign their attendance every morning and also clock out, right? So that's an attendance project that that we've assigned to Mary to do, right? And we've said that for this particular phase, we are going to be like version 1 to 3, right? But we said that for version 1, we wanted to for people to be able to sign in with their fingerprints and then also with their key cards as well, right? And then let's say Chris walks in. Chris is part of senior management, and it comes down, to Mary to say, "Hi, Mary, how are you today? Let's can you pop in for a quick chat?" Maybe get into Chris's office, and Chris is saying that, I was thinking, what do you think? Can we allow people to be able to log in with their office email addresses as well as they come in? In a case like that, what do we call that? Guys,
Is that variation?
no, that's not variation. I mentioned something earlier called a scope creep, meaning
That's the scope group here, where we like shift from what we had earlier read, and then trying to maybe one of the parties trying to say, okay, I'm thinking we should adjust something in terms of what's so like moving the mark anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, changing the goalpost. Yeah. I mean, so for that, what will your answer be typically?
Based on what you said, I think it's not something I can by myself decide. We all of us have to come back to the drawing board.
Yeah.
We all decided, that this is what we want to work on. So let's come back to the drawing board. Is it achievable?
Yeah.
Yeah. Will it cost us more? So basically, having another like project management meeting, something like that.
Yeah. Great. Fantastic. Yeah. So I mean, you want to pull everybody back to the board and say, guys, this was what we agreed, and you show off that signed document. So you usually get a project charter, which we'll take a look at in an instance. We'll take a look at that, and you take a look at that and say, look, this was what we agreed, and these are the implications if we decide to do this. Then put it back to them and say, okay, guys, since we now know the pros and the cons, what do we want to do? Do we still want to go ahead, or we can put this in version 2 or version 3, right? Is it a regulatory requirement? If it's not, then there's really no. It's just I think the other thing you also want to do is to take a look to ask, is it a must-have or a nice-to-have? Can anyone tell me the difference between a must-have and a nice-to-have?
Okay, I think. Sorry, can I speak?
Yes, please go ahead.
So I think must have will be something like the statutory that you talked about, or maybe regulatory requirements that we know, okay, this CBN thing, we cannot shelve it. If not, our product is not going to go live. Then nice to have could be like, oh, okay, I saw this on another person's app. I feel like it's I like the interface, it looks colorful or something like that. So it's really not going to affect the delivery of the product. It's not going to affect the workability of the product. It's just something that feels good.
Exactly. So it's just a feel good. So I mean, you want to in your first level, you want to focus on must-haves, and must-haves means that your must-haves means that what you need for that product to work, right? one of the things that we do in my team is, I mean, like I said, you would always have issues when it comes to engineering and bugs, right? But one of the things that we do is we always make sure that we classify those bugs according to critical, non-critical, and very low, right? Or high and low, medium, low, right? So if, let's say we have 10 bugs, right? And out of those 10 bugs, only two are critical bugs and the others are minimum or low, right? And then, I just pull everyone to the table. I pull the product manager and I said, look, Chief, which of these items are that if we launch today, the application will have issues? And they say, okay, 1, 2, 3, the application will have issues. 3, 4 to 10 or 4 to 10 are basically just, we can do it in version 2, or we can continue to fix them and update as you go. And then I say, guys, let's do that. Can we do that? Okay, if I'll get back to you, let me speak to CPO. And CPO and product manager comes back and says, okay, fair, yes, we can quickly do that. And let's get it out of the way so that you also meet your timelines as well. And those make sense for you because and that's where stakeholder management, comes into play. You want to be able to manage your stakeholders accordingly, be able to manage them so that they know that it's not that you don't want to do the work, but you're also looking out for the business and the product as a whole so that everyone goes home happy at the end of the day and nobody is worse off, right? So that's basically what that is. Okay, so the process or the life cycle of project management. It usually starts, so every project goes through this 5 phases or this 5 processes or this life cycle, right? We have a project life cycle, and then we also have a project software delivery life cycle and a product life cycle separate, but this is a project. So you have the definition and the initiation stage, which is the beginning of the project, right? Basically, what you're doing here is you're taking a look at everything that you have, right? And you're pulling out, okay, we want to do this project, right? So let's define it. We want to create an app or a platform for our staff to be able to log in at the big when they come in, so that they are not just and in case so that they don't, if by adventure they even throw away their key cards, right? They can still get in, right? So those you want to define all of those things. You put all of those things in place. We'll look at the documents that we need to churn out, and also work around documentation as well. One of the things that if you don't like documentation, you might not like being a project manager, because you get to tend to do a lot of documentation. And why do I say that, right? So for example, you want to always keep your stakeholders abreast of what's happening. So at the end of every week, in my office, I usually send like a status report, right, of where we are and where we are going for what we intend to do in the coming week, right? As a project manager, you would have to do that, right? You need to, so that people know what to expect. You also need to let them know. Sorry. Is anyone's hand up? Chris, yes, please go ahead.
Not like a sort of project governance.
Yeah. So you need to keep them, abreast of what's happening. So you're meant to deliver so in 2 weeks. As at the end of week 1, this is what we've done. If there are going to be changes, you need to let them know ahead of time, so that so it doesn't get to 3 days to end of the project and I just telling them that there's going to be changes. No, you don't want to do that. It will cause issues for you at the end of the day, right? You need to be able to communicate up and lower as fast and as soon as possible, right? So if you don't like documentation, please start getting to like documentation. But it also depends on your organization, right? So I work in a firm where um, people don't you don't have to do emails, right? So once you do Slack or Teams, just put all your updates there, and then create a channel for everyone, and everyone knows what's happening, right? That it depends on your organization, but typically you need to be. Basically, what I'm saying is you want to learn how to communicate better if you're not really a good communicator. Um, yeah. So project planning basically means that you've decided on the project, you've spooled out your project charter, you have your milestones, you've done the basic introductions, who is going to handle what, how long this project is going to take. So your project plan is to now properly document all of those. So you now have a PMP, which is a project management plan. We'll take a look at that in this class as well, right? So a project management plan basically is a full-fledged management plan, right? And what does that mean? It means that for everyone that is going to be working on that project to be documented, how you are going to communicate, how often you are going to communicate, the necessary milestones. You'd have a schedule as well. The necessary milestones, what you are going to do, how you are going to do it, who is in charge of how you escalate, what the change management is going to look like. If someone brings a change, how it's going to go to change board or change management board for approval, and all of those things, right? All of that is going to get into your project management plan. We'll take a look at an example, and then we'll try to create one ourselves so that we see what it looks like. Right. Also, quick notes. As once you have a template, right, as a project manager, it makes your job 50% easier. So you're just putting stuff into it, right? And not every organization uses the same template, right? Before I joined my present organization, I designed most of the templates that we used. Now I'm not even using templates at all, because all I'm just doing is using Slack. And I'm just using Slack and an internal tool that we have, right? So it depends on the organization that you work with. Again, so you put all of those stuff, but templates make life a whole lot easier, and then you can tweak to fill in or to do whatever it is that you want to do, right? Then it comes to project execution, right? So what is project execution? Project execution is basically when you start doing work, right? So you have your work breakdown structure of how each phase is going to be, how each phase is going to be done, what they are going to do in each of those phases. Are you going to hire engineers? Are you going to, subcontract this? Is it going to be built in-house? Is it not going to be built in-house? What are the, criteria, or what are the questions that you need to ask? Is the scope document clear? Are we going to do this, or what are we not going to do? What are we going to do, right? So I mean, those are the things that would go into execution. You want to start doing that, how we are going to do it. Yeah, so that's the execution. Then monitoring basically means that we are making sure that the things that we put into play are not lagging, right? So we are monitoring our costs. We are monitoring everything that goes into our projects. We are not taking anything for granted. Basically, we are making sure that the things that we need to do are in play, right? And then project closure, end of the cycle. So once you've delivered that project, right, like I said, then that project is done. Then you start doing your closeouts, your handover, if it, depending on what kind of project it is. So let's say the project is an external project, right? or internal project. So let's say you're a supplier or you're a contractor that have gone to work on a project. So once you are done with that project, you pull up your documentation, your handover documents. If you're going to do a post handover support, some people do 3 months, some people do 6 months, depending on the services that you render, and then what you and the client agree, to do, right? And then you document this, you hand it over, and then they put it in the archives or the PMO office, so that you can use those learnings that you learned from this project, to handle other projects as well. That's the typical what you do as a project manager. Everything you do falls into one of these five things, right? So you want to be able to go through each of those phases one after the other, especially when you start using the waterfall model. We'll talk about that as well. So in project management, let me preempt myself a little. In project management, there are typically two, two, if I'm being minimalistic, to how you deliver projects. You can either do the waterfall model, and waterfall model basically means you do A before you do B, before you do C, right? And the next one talks about being agile. Agile means that you are flexible for change, right? And agile usually tends to work when you are developing softwares, and applications, right? Because you don't have to have the full picture in sight before you start to deliver. Case in point is, I can say, so let's say I'm a financial systems, or I'm a financial service. Let's say I'm a bank, right? And I want people to be able to send money, receive money, do loans, save, and all of that stuff. I can launch the app with you just being able to save, right? And then 3 months down the line, I've introduced another feature for you to be able to send money out of the UK or receive money from anywhere in the world, right? So that's what Agile does. But we'll take a look at that as well in the course of our 6 weeks program. Yeah. Any questions on these processes before we start to dive into phase one? No questions? Good to go? Okay, so I'm going to answer that. All right. So phase one is the initiation phase, right? So initiation phase marks the beginning of a project. It is where the project is conceived and its visibility is assessed, right? So most often than not, you do what we call that might not be you, depending on the project and the organization. It might be something we call a feasibility study or a business case, right? And does anyone know what a feasibility study is? Anybody?
I can try.
Please go ahead.
It could just be assessing if that project is actually possible, if it's going to be viable, and if it's going to be feasible or doable.
Fantastic, right? So that's basically it, right? So we want to see if the app that we want to build for people to be able to log in is feasible, right? I mean, does it make sense for us to do it? Why do we want to do it? What's the problem that is going to solve? Right? Is it going to solve lateness? Did an issue happen that we need to resolve? Is it going to solve ghost workers? Is it going to solve, so I mean, the person that wants that project would start to do that feasibility study. So let's say it is, is IO's company, and IO is saying, look, I want people to, and they've done some root cause analysis and found out that they are paying people for overtime when they shouldn't be paying people for overtime, right? So I said, okay, look, for us to be able to cut this cost, let's implement an attendance platform, right, where people can sign in and sign out, right? So, but typically what happens on a day-to-day basis is people just come in, write their names, um, maybe write her name in the morning, or someone helps maybe to sign in the morning, which is very typical of most organizations. And then your office also pays for overtime, right? And then Mary doesn't sign out, even though she's not. Mary doesn't sign out. Mary signs out. Mary goes home at 5 o'clock, but Mary doesn't sign out at until maybe 6 p.m. or until 7 p.m. because you're going to get paid. On that day, or maybe there was weekend work, and Chris doesn't come to work, but Mary is his friend, and then she helps him put his name down as someone who came to work on Saturday, and then he gets paid overtime. Right. So I've said so. I said, look, this is what we need to do, right, so that we can eliminate. And then you've done the case study, you've done the feasibility study, and realize that okay, this might work, right? And this is what we need to do. We need to be able to cut out ghost workers, ghosts, people who do overtimes that are not eventually doing overtime, and then so that we can know who exactly is in the system, and pay people accordingly to whatever it is that you do. That is what a feasibility study or a business case is, right? Is that clear, guys? People?
Yes, that's clear.
Great. All right. So and then we are going to also do a project charter. So we're going to take a look at the document called a project. It's an example of a project charter. I would also, if we can't do our own in this class, excuse me, we'll do ours in the next class. So what exactly is a project charter? A project charter is a document, usually not so elongated, sometimes 5 to 6 pages of documentation to show it's going to show who your stakeholders are, what you want to do, who your project sponsor is, the scope of the document, the necessary things that that you need to do as a project manager, milestones if necessary, and the rest, right? So that's what a project charter does. It creates a document that formally authorizes the project and outlines its objectives, stakeholders, and high level scope. So a high level scope of what you want to achieve in that particular project, right? That is what a project charter does. In your initiation phase, you want to start identifying stakeholders as well, right? So, so let me just throw this question open. So let's say we want to build that, that attendance application, right? And let me throw this open. Who do we think are the stakeholders? Okay, let me redefine the question, right? So a stakeholder is someone who would be impacted by the project, whether directly or indirectly, right? So that's a stakeholder. So having said that, saying that we want to build an application that allows us to track people's attendance coming in and going out, who do we think that the stakeholders are in this particular project?
Maybe the branch manager.
Okay, that's good.
Okay, the stakeholder will be the staff themselves, the people you are trying to. So that's generally,
Yeah.
in a way, you could say everybody.
Yeah, because it affects them, right?
Yes, because it actually affects everybody. So I'll just say everybody, because everybody will be impacted by this. Definitely HR too. Well, they are part of the HR too, because you need a comprehensive staff list to be able to write any program or develop anything on behalf of the whole staff. You definitely need to be able to get a list of everybody that will be affected. So depending on the organization, HR, then the staff that will be affected as well.
Yeah, great. And any more suggestions?
I think the developers, software developers, if since we're building an app, then
Yeah,
like you said, sponsor. So project sponsor could be maybe like the management of the company,
yeah,
that app done.
great.
Then the project manager too and his team.
Yeah, so I mean, so you want to be able to identify all of those stuff, all of those people, and say, okay, look, so the project sponsor, like Mary said, would probably be the person who maybe. So if your project sponsor usually is the person you run to when you're in trouble, right? Always make sure that it's somebody senior. Right. Always make sure that is somebody senior. Somebody senior so that the person has power and influence to be able to get you to the finish line. Do you guys get what I mean? People, do you guys get what I mean?
Yeah,
Yes, you do.
that's
Great.
something that
Yes.
you can only determine yourself. I don't think you'll be able to determine who the
No, no,
so
no.
will be in all cases.
Yeah. I mean, most times product sponsors usually are the owners of the project, right? Most often than not, right? Sometimes they might not be the owner. So, for example, let's say it was the HR that proposed this to the project to senior management, right? The HR in this case would be the project owner, and then they can say, look, maybe HR has someone called ED Corporate Services or EDHR, right? So that person can be the project sponsor. Is that clear, guys? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Great. So right. So you would have the project owner who is HR, and then project sponsor who is the maybe group head corporate services or group head HR, depending on what structure the organization holds, right? And you always want to make sure that that person is carried along because that person would be a senior person and would have some sort of sway or some sort of influence along the line. I mean, I've had most of my project sponsors have been the CTO, my CTOs. It was a major project that I did that the sponsor was the MD. And then there was one very, very peculiar project that was the GMD of the finance house. So, I mean, it depends on, the project and the type of project and then the impact that they would have on the organization, right? Right. So you try to identify your project sponsors. If it's an external team, you try to identify vendors and all of that. Then you identify your team members. Most often than not, you would have um, if it's not a core technology team, so you would have a project team, right? And the project team would not just mean people in your department or in the technology team or the software developers, right? So you'd have people who own the project, right? So like someone from HR, right, to help you understand the project more so that when you're stuck and then people need clarification about things, right, they can explain to you because it's their project, right? You need you need a secretary, right? Because while you're chasing people up and down, you obviously don't want to be the one taking notes and all of that stuff, right? You would also need so depending on you can structure your team as you want. You need some support depending on how big the project is. You need a secretary. You can pull in someone from finance to or accounting to help you with budgeting, tracking expenses, and all of that stuff. And then your technology team that are going to build the projects. Let's assume that you have a department of people who build applications, right? So, I mean, you then have to build your team and say these are the people that you want to work with, and these are their working hours. They'll get paid over time. You can now say, look, they're going to work weekends, maybe Saturdays and Sundays, we are going to have to pay them over time, or we are going to, since they're working on the project, we are going to have to pay them, some sort of extra incentive at the end of the day. I mean, so it depends on what you want to work out with the project sponsor, or the project owner at the end of the day. Yeah, so that's the being able to identify your stakeholders. So you want to identify all of those people, team members, end users. You might want to do some backtracking and have a conversation with staff as well to say, okay, if you want to do this, how do you want it to be? How convenient do you want it to take? How long should it, respond to you? 5 seconds, 2 seconds. I mean, so what impact do you think this would have upon your, on your delivery and all of those, things? You want to identify those people when you are doing that documentation. Then your high level scope definition, right? So define the project's high level scope, outlining what it will and what it will not include. What that typically means, like we said earlier, everything you want to do in this period. So let's say the first phase would be 3 months, right? So everything you want to do over the 3 months should be properly documented. So I'll say I want HR to be able to take a look at it, have an admin page. I want HR to be able to spool out page. I want people should not be able to sign in remotely from their houses, so that it won't look like they're, that they're home, that they're working while they're home. People cannot sign in. When you sign in and sign out, you can't sign in within a space of 5 minutes. You want to be able to put all of those things out there so that people see, what it is that you're doing. So that when someone comes, with a special request or with an extra request, you can now say, sir, this was not what we agreed on. This is what we agreed. You show them your project charter or your scope document, depending on, what you decide to go with. And then you have that conversation, and then you can then say, okay, look, sir, let's come back to the table. This will take us an extra 3 weeks to build. Can we do this in the next phase? Because once we've done this, we're going to start version 2, right? Can we do this in the next phase? Can we not do this at all? Or if you want us to do it now, this is going to be the cost and time implication of this, right? And then you have that conversation. Just a second, guys. Okay. All right. So that's basically our initiation phase, right? And what are the documents that you need? We mentioned the feasibility study earlier. So so you have a feasibility study. I think I have an example that I'll share. Have a feasibility study document or a use case or a business case document. It shows, what you want to do on the project and how you want to, what's the value or the advantage of that project is to the overall organization. And then your stakeholder analysis is, who you report to, who you are going to, who is going to respond to issues when you have those issues, how you are going to communicate with those people as well. A project charter. The most important on this list is your project charter, and then maybe your stakeholder analysis as well, because most often than not, your scope statement would be in your project charter, so you can put it in there so that you don't have too many documentations flying around, right? So an example is we are initiating a software development project for a new mobile app. The project charter defines the project's purpose, the key stakeholders, and the initial scope. So that's basically our initiation phase. So we're going to, so you need your project charter. You need to have done some sort of feasibility study. It might not be you, like I said, it might be the project owner who needs the. So for that project to even get a kickoff in the first place, that feasibility study or business case should have been, seen by the project sponsor, and then, given a go ahead to do. Right. So, so I'm going to share an example of what a project charter looks like, and we can just, see it from there. That's the second, guys. I don't know if you guys can see my screen. Kick off.
Yes, we can, or I
Yes,
can
I
anyway.
can. Yes,
Great,
I
great.
Yes, I can.
Yes.
Fantastic. All right. So this is what a project charter looks like. So we're going to go through all the elements and see. So the project name. So I'm going to do like a mini class, mini assignments. I'm going to share. I'll drop that with Dewi. So I'll drop us a project charter template, and then I'm going to drop like a little note, and then we'll come up with one, and then we'll review it in class next week. I hope that works for everyone, so that we can start to do some hands-on. Yep, great. Great.
Please, can you come again? I didn't hear the last sentence.
Oh yes, so I said I'm going to drop a template with Demi and some sort of classwork, and then we can, just it doesn't have to be perfect, so just mumble as many things as you want inside, and then we'll take a look at it together next week, and then we'll take it from there.
Okay, that's fine.
Great, thanks, Busala. All right, so our project name is ServiceNow Education for SDOC Employees. This is the start date, and this is the end date, right? So what's the project organization? So the project manager, the name is here. The sponsor's name is here. The steering committee. A steering committee is people who take decisions on projects, right? So basically, especially when it comes to IT projects, so what you have is you have your CTO, most likely. Your CTO basically is your chief technology officer. So you would have your CTO most often than not. You would have some senior key leadership people. Your CEO most often will not there, depending on his availability as well. So you'd have your CTO, you'd have your maybe someone in technology to sound as the project manager. You have maybe someone from HR, someone from risk, depending on how big your leadership team is. So basically, they are the ones who decide on the different projects, and then which projects should work based on justification, and then they also follow up on your project reports as well. All right. So we have the project team. And then you're saying that these people would meet weekly. Excuse me. These people will meet weekly and then as needed as well. Others involved, states branded communication. These are people for the project team, right? And then we have the project details, right? So write a brief description of this project in sample. So ServiceNow also the friend starts SDOC service portal was launched this to employees so that they can enter support tickets, right? So what are support tickets? Support tickets are when you call a service desk, right? And you are trying to report an issue, right? They would ask you to raise a ticket, or they raise a ticket for you. Raising a ticket means that they want to be able to help you solve that problem so that you don't have issues at the end of the day. Right. So so the goal of this project is to educate so employees on how and why to use ServiceNow, how to log in, difference between requesting something and reporting a problem. So you've seen that all of the goals of that particular project. So and this you will probably get from your case study or your feasibility study or your business case, right? So then they said they will create a job and a 2-minute video. New hires will receive the information at onboarding. A training meeting will be concluded with the executive assistant, admin assistant, and program secretaries. The outcome of the project is to reduce the the requests that come in through the side door, direct emails, phones, calls, chats, and working to the SS and other IT staff. So instead, they will be entered into ServiceNow. Right. So what that means is rather than me just calling Mary's office to say, Mary, I have a problem. Oh. Mary will just say, if I go and log it into ServiceNow, right? Or I call Ayo's office and say, Ayo, please, I'm having issues with this problem. Ayo says, look, when so that way I can already see a use case for this because I mean we do the same thing in our organization. Nobody is going to. So if I say I reported this, there's no proof that you reported, that issue that you have. But being able to log it into the platform, what would that do? That would mean that I can easily track it and I can know how long it took for my problem to be solved, right? So in the scope, the effort will impact all SSE employees who request and resolving technical issues because executive assistants, administrative assistants, and program secretaries often assist others by entering tickets on their behalf, right? This project is not intended to educate people, soft or SIS customers. Can anyone tell me what this statement means? Based on our scope conversation. Anybody? Ayo?
And I think it's not for the probably not for the customers, maybe it's for the staff themselves. I don't know if
Okay.
that makes sense.
Thanks, Masala. Anybody else want to try? Chris, I can see you want to say something.
I think it just means that this is for a particular purpose and project,
Yeah.
which is titled ServiceNow. So basically, PeopleSoft or SIS might be
Are not
a
going to be
separate.
involved. Yeah, exactly. So they are not going to be involved in this particular project. They are said this two people, accept this is a separate, entity entirely, right? So as you can see, this project is for educating employees on ServiceNow as it exists in March 2021. No ServiceNow development or changes are needed for this project. So they are telling us that. So if a manager now comes down the line and says, Ayo, I want you to educate PeopleSoft and SIS customers, what do you now then say, Ayo?
You need to politely let him know that that is out of scope.
Exactly. Fantastic. So you just let them know that. I mean, basically, you just show them the document signed and sealed. This was our last conversation. If you want this to change, then let's have a broader meeting with the project sponsor, project owner, and then maybe the steering committee as well. So that's a perfect example, right? So you have the objective and success criteria, or at the completion of the project, all SD COE employees are especially the executive assistant, will know the expected procedure for requesting tech support. The new job aid and video will be clear, concise, and easy to use. So these are the success criteria. This is how we know that your project was a success, right? So goals alignment, with which both goals and items does this project align? So you take maybe it's the corporate services department or corporate services unit or facility unit, depending on what you want to call it. Then deliverables, which products which products or results do you expect upon completion of this project, right? A job posted at Common Ground Information Security Service Now, a 2-minute video of how to submit a technology support, the recorded 30-minute training, a variety of communication from Stacy Branded's methods are to be discussed, a script for CSS to use where someone contacts them directly, right? And then the risks involved, the details of all the necessary risks, the schedule and milestones. So remember that I said when we were talking about milestones and deliverables, milestones are what you want to achieve at a certain point, right? So we are saying that by the end of 3 weeks, we want to be able to do all of these things, right? For 3.5 weeks, we want to be able to design and develop materials, plan meetings, and then execute education and communication, and then use 1 week to close the project itself, right? And then what are the tools that we're going to use? We're going to use monday.com, We're going to use Microsoft Teams for communication, monday.com to do the project itself, and other items to consider. Project budget, estimated cost of the project, communication plan, tracking and status updates, training plan. This will be fleshed out when we start doing the project management plan, right? Training plan, documentation plan, then the project closeout. So this is what a short document, but to a large extent we have an idea, right, of what the project is going to be about, right? So for example, I know what the project name is, I know who the project manager is, and I know the project sponsor, and I know the project team, right? So so that's basically what a project charter looks like. So like I said, I'll share a document today, tomorrow with Demi, and then we can draw up our own. It doesn't have to be perfect. We'll take a review, a shot at it next week in class, but I want you guys to get a bit hands-on so that when that project role does eventually come up and you're trying to create a project charter, you can see how it's done. Okay. Any questions, guys? Before I think we're at our time's end. Let me see if he's coming back. Any questions, guys? People?
Nope.
Great. Thanks, Chris. Ayo, Busala, Mary.
None for now.
Great.
None here.
Thank you, Mary. All right. If not aware, hope I'm saying this correctly. So class is for 6 weeks, and then there's the mentoring session that's also for 6 weeks as well. So we'll do this for 6 weeks. Put you guys through. Maybe yes, please go ahead.
Okay, so I was going to ask, are we going to have the course outlined, and then also, is it possible to get I don't know what's this called? Oh God, my brain. What we have just done, the slides rather.
Yes. I'll share the slides with you. It's no problem. It's still part of a bigger slide, but I'll share everything with you. It's fine. All right. Yes. So yeah, Chris, you want to say something? Please go ahead.
You mentioned the mentoring bit.
Yeah. So classes for 6 weeks, and the mentoring part as well. That is for 6 weeks. But if you do have any questions, please, guys, feel free to reach out to Jamie. She's more than happy to answer all your necessary questions and feedback as well. All right, guys. So thanks, everyone. Let's have a good weekend. So I'll share our assignment with Day, and then she'll share with you guys. Let's have a good weekend, everyone.
Yeah, sorry, when is the next class?
That'll be next weekend, same time, I believe. Hopefully, I don't think we are back in GMT yet. So I think everyone is I think the UK is still 1 hour ahead. So it'll probably be same time next week. But I'm sure if that changes, they will communicate. Yeah, maybe you're saying something. Yeah.
I said we're 1 hour behind Nigeria.
Yes, sorry. Yes, 1 hour behind. Yes, apologies. So if that changes, I'm sure they will communicate, but I don't think it will change. Thanks, guys. Let's have a good day, everyone.
You too. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.